Sorry. I think he...
Good afternoon, everyone. I think it's 4:02, so we'll start the session. Hope everyone is safe and healthy. Hope I'm audible to everyone. Please raise your hands and let me know if I'm audible to everyone. Yeah, I can see hands raising up. Okay, fine. Welcome to the World Environment Day celebrations hosted by Legasis in association with Bombay Stock Exchange. Before we start with the session, some hygiene points to be taken care of. Everybody is on mute except for the panelist. We strongly advise that nobody should share any links, or if any link is shared on the chat box, please do not open it. We will have last 15 to 20 minutes for Q&A session with the panelists. We appreciate all the attendees to ask as many questions as many you have. We'll take it one by one. And questions to be posted on Q&A box, which is at the bottom of your panel on the Zoom. The webinar is recorded and it's also available on our YouTube channel. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Moving on, the moderator for the session is Mr. Suhas Tuljapurkar. He's the founder, director of Legasis Services and managing partner of Legasis Partners. Our first speaker for the event is Professor Anil Gupta. We welcome you, Professor Anil Gupta. Professor Anil Gupta is a pioneer in the area of grassroots innovations. He's founder of Honeybee Network. He retired as a full-time professor at IIM Ahmedabad in 2017, where he served for about 36 years. I would now request Professor Gupta to share a few words on the occasion of World Environment Day. Over to you, Professor Gupta.
Thank you. Thank you. Can you remove this?
Yeah.
Good afternoon, friends. It's an important day because recently all of us experienced an extraordinary rebound in nature. So just a few days before the lockdown was opened up, we all were in our homes. There was no traffic on the road. Children for the first time heard the sounds of the bird in the daytime. Many children saw first time stars in Mumbai or in Ahmedabad or in other cities. They had never seen sky full of stars because of the pollution. The rivers were clean and so many other signs of nature rebounding, nature regenerating itself in such a little time. Imagine the decades of pollution, maybe century of pollution had been overcome by the nature's resilience in such a little time. So that shows that if we decide together to heal the nature, nature will heal us. It will be making us stronger, much more compassionate and kind and cooperative. So let us look at what are the lessons we can learn from during the COVID-19, the rebound of nature that has taken place. Is there a lesson in it? The first lesson, I would say, emerges from a metaphor, a story of the prince. Many of you must have read that book, small book called as The Prince. So there's a dialogue between the fox and the prince. And prince says, I have seen thousands of foxes like you. How do I care? And the fox says, no, but you have not tried to understand me. And they have been arguing each other that, look, fox says I matter, I'm special, and the prince doesn't realize that. After a while, fox says, prince, remember, if you want to understand me, tame me. Same thing about the virus. The COVID virus is going to stay with us. It's not going to go away. We need to tame it. Tame it to become part of a healthy future. And that would require, of course, changing many things that we're doing. So one of the first things that we need to do is to ask ourselves as to how the industrial production process that has been so vibrant and so efficient in terms of taking a toll of environment, but also giving us growth, employment, jobs. Is it possible to have green growth? Is it possible to have slower growth, but more inclusive growth? Look at this way. look at a sachet of ₹1 sachet of hair oil or a mouth freshener or a shampoo. You will call it very frugal innovation, very affordable innovation. Indeed, it is. Now calculate the cost of collecting that piece of plastic from 650,000 or 700,000 villages of India. It's a very costly innovation. Our matrices for evaluating what is frugal for consumer and what is frugal for environment will have to change. We will have to start asking ourselves the question, is it frugal for the environment? Or is it just the frugal for consumer? And that would trigger a whole range of decisions in our value chain, where we will start re-looking our processes, our supply chains. Similarly, look at the concept of circular economy, following from what I said just now. What is circular economy? Circular economy defines waste as a resource, as a material for which use has not yet been found. Use has not yet been found. What does it mean? It means that we need to find, there is no zero waste economy. That's what it means, zero waste economy. Zero waste economy is possible. But there are certain steps. Supposing we decide today that we want to move towards zero waste economy, the first step that will be required after that, do we have a waste exchange in this country? Does everybody who represent a manufacturing industry or service industry in this webinar today can recall a portal where he or she has uploaded the quantity of waste that they have, for which they are looking for a buyer or somebody who will transform it into something useful? That will be the step one. That means your waste will become my raw material. And new innovations will emerge, new technologies will emerge, which will focus on rejuvenating, repurposing, reusing in some sense this waste. So we must also ask ourselves as to whether we are going to work towards that, for which we will need to then work on reverse logistics. How many companies today use reverse logistics? That means you bring a refrigerator to my home, there's a packing around it. Don't leave that packing at my home. Take it back. It may be useful to you for your next pack. You are selling me a television, take the packet back. Amazon sends millions of packets every day to consumers in this country, but they don't collect it back. What do you do with this package? You throw them away. Now they are very good condition packets. They can be used for 2 times, 3 times, 5 times. What's the harm in Amazon collecting it back? But we have not yet put that pressure on the companies to have reverse logistics, reverse supply chain, to collect all packaging. In Germany, if you export something and if your package is non-renewable, they will not let you leave it in Germany. You have to take it back to your country. They did it years ago, decades ago. And it is WTO compatible because they do it for the domestic companies, the same thing. So the world trade system is compatible with green economy, with circular economy, with reverse logistics. So I think we must start looking at how we will be able to bring the concept of zero waste economy in our framework. How did our society develop these concepts? Is it part of our culture? And I would say strongly, yes. Our culture has been very frugal. I remember when I was a child, we lived in a very small room. About 15 people lived in just 2 rooms in Old Delhi when we used to come from our school to stay with our grandparents, maternal grandparents. You go to the market in Daryaganj, buy some packet. At that time, there were no envelopes. Plastic envelope had not yet been invented, and even the paper envelope used to be costly. So what would shopkeeper have? He will have cut pieces of newspaper, and he will have a roll of thread hanging from the roof. He will take the piece of newspaper, put the things that you have bought, wrap them and tie the thread around it and give it to you. That was the packet. Very flexible, very frugal, very functional. It had all the 3 qualities. You can hold it properly. If necessary, he will make a small loop so that you can hold it in hand. And when we brought it back to home, my grandfather would say, okay, now take out your things. He'll take the piece of newspaper, put it under the bed. He'll take the piece of thread, hang it on a nail. Next time when somebody asks you for something, use the same piece of paper and use the same piece of thread. This is part of our culture. This is the culture I have grown up with. That's the culture with many of you have grown up with. Then what happened to us? How did we become such a waste-oriented society where we don't think twice, we don't even blink an eye when we waste resources and we waste our packaging material? 30 to 40% waste is produced by packaging material. So surely Bombay Stock Exchange and Legasis and Honeybee Network is willing to join hand with you. We should start competition, crowdsourcing competition for inviting ideas for green packaging. You all know that in South India, your idli is packed in banana leaf. Wonderful packaging, keeps it warm, keeps it fresh. Oil remains there, it doesn't absorb the oil, unlike the paper. It keeps everything fresh, very healthy. And banana leaf is disinfectant. Now organisms grow on it. As you can see, banana leaf, you will seldom find any pest on it. Very healthy. There are a large number of such packaging materials available. Coconut leaf. A company has recently made, one scientist sent me a mail. He has made straws out of coconut leaves. We use plastic straws. So it is possible. In this country, some innovations are taking place, but we are not becoming conscious. So if Bombay Stock Exchange, Legasis, Honeybee Network can join hand, and we start a crowdsourcing competition for ideas on reducing waste and providing regenerative solutions, it will be a great contribution for environmental conservation and augmentation. Quality of environment will improve. For those of you who believe that it's a new idea, let me tell you, on 24th July, 1929, Mahatma Gandhi gave a call for crowdsourcing ideas to redesign the spinning wheel. And he announced an award of 7,700 pounds, which was equivalent to 1 lakh rupees at that time in 1929. Today, it will be about 10 crore. For Bombay Stock Exchange to announce prices of crore or 10 crore is not a big deal. But why, if we care about environment, then I would say by the end of the seminar, end of the webinar, we should have an announcement that yes, it makes sense. We must put our mouth where our action is. Our action should be there in terms of making our spirit come true, which is only possible when we galvanize the creative energy of our society in solving these problems. Let me take you an example. How does our culture cope with this problem? In Nogriat village in Meghalaya, I've been walking in every part of the country. Some of you might know, I have walked in every state of the country, from Andaman's island to Gorej Valley in Jammu Kashmir. Every single state, many twice, maybe thrice, maybe 5 times. And during these walks, we come across fascinating stories of how our society has conserved environment wherever it has, and it has done it in many places. So in Nogriat village, we found a double-decker bridge of roots of ficus species, rubber tree. Double-decker bridge. So we asked them a question. Why did you make such a bridge? You could have made of concrete, you could have made of wire, you could have made of cement or iron or whatever. They said, sir, we wanted to make something which is different, something which will last long, something which will not produce entropy in their language, they said. So the first culprit was culture. If the culture of the organization, culture of the network, culture of this platform, culture of the webinar participants, if that culture triggers questions which will force us to think of different ideas, we will start finding those ideas. I can assure you that. Then the second question emerged, okay, so how do we make this? So they saw the roots of the ficus growing on both sides of the river. They said, they look like rope, maybe we can tie them. That was technology. And the third was, you need group action. Individual cannot make this bridge. That is institution. So technology is like word, institutions are like grammar, culture is like thesaurus. We need all the three. We need all the three for a sustainable outcome. You know, it takes 50 years to make this bridge. It lasts for 200 to 300 years. Tell me one project that we have designed in the contemporary time which will last that long, except the waste, except the plastic, which will last for hundreds of years maybe. But which is the functional product which will last that long? We don't think of durability. We want to change everything. We don't feel that it is all right to rejuvenate products. Rejuvenate meaning adding new life to the product. And that's possible. That's possible without reducing efficiency of our system. I'm not going to make compromise on efficiency. But what is efficient? Efficient is to live in a world which is worth living in. Breathe the air which is worth breathing in. Look at the sky which is worth looking at. So I would strongly suggest that we should do that. We should look at such examples. Now I come to the last part of my talk where I would like to give some more suggestions about how can Bombay Stock Exchange and Legasis leverage their partnership for something more tangible, something more durable, something more impactful. First is that the practices that companies are using, good practices that companies are using. Once a chartered accountant went to a factory to audit it. I was having a conference of accounting people in our institute where I've been teaching at IMA, and they gave me an idea. I said, has any one of you, you go to so many firms to do audit, have you ever come across innovations? One of them said, sir, we always look for fault. We always look for flaws. We don't look for strengths. I said, forget it, but you must not disappoint me. One of them got up. Sir, I went to a factory in Pune, and there was a water dripping from the air conditioner. And when I was looking at the accounts, I found that this firm was buying a lot of distilled water. I told them, why don't you collect this water? It is distilled water. And we saved so much of water for that factory. Now, even a profession like accounting can contribute creatively to look at those resources which factories. I was in another company in Pune, I would not like to mention the name. And there was a lot of waste which was lying there. I asked them, they were dealing with fly ash boilers. You can imagine which company it was. So I said, do you know what your ash contains? What is the raw material you use? They said, we use rice husk. What is the silica content in the ash? 90%, more than 90%. What do you need silica for? The glass and ceramics. Have you thought about building a value chain around all your husk going to glass and ceramic industry? That is the kind of thinking we will have to develop. We'll have to look at what is that special thing about my waste, which can regenerate itself into new products and services, new value chains, so that our economy will grow, our costs will go down, and we'll be having green future. So I think we must do this audit, material audit of each factory. We must do social audit, we must do environmental audit, and we must also look at which are the ways which everybody can use it, so that we start making green economy. Education is second area where we must try to incorporate. Children are the most creative conserver of environment. I have most hope from the children because they have started changing their behavior. They started asking questions. And I wish children will ask you, did you start traveling less? Are you doing more work from home now that the lockout is down? And I think they will put pressure on us that, look, it was so wonderful when you were at home. Why do you have to go every day to office? And you won't be able to give an answer. Did world stop when you were not going to office? No. But yes, sometimes you have to go, sometimes you don't have to go. And when you don't have to go and work from home, I think that itself will reduce so much of pollution. So we must learn from COVID-19 that there are lessons, that there's a value in being together with the family that can itself be harnessed as a positive value. And last point that I want to make is, which you might like to consider, all of us should remember that we all are a great consumer of knowledge and ideas. So we have a very high download ratio and very poor upload ratio.
That's true.
India wants to be a knowledge leader, but doesn't share. It only consumes. So my request is that if every firm, every participant who is present, at least writes one blog on one change that I and you have brought about in our life to make this world more beautiful, more greener, more saner, I think this webinar has served its purpose. Just one blog, 500 words, not more, I'm asking. I see how many people are there, 112 people writing 500 words, about 5,000, 6,000 words of concrete action, past perfect to future indefinite. That is the learning of my life. From past perfect to future indefinite. What have we done to what we may do in future? And I'm sure each one of you has taken some steps which are much better than what I've described, much stronger, much more greener, much more durable, much more sustainable. I have no doubt about it. So let me conclude by a small story and then I finish. 2,000 years ago, Some of you might have heard this story. I'm very fond of telling this story every time I meet some people on environmental issues. So he asked a student to bring a glass of water. The student brought a glass of water. He took the water. He gave the empty glass to the student. The student went back and kept the glass in the kitchen. So he asked the student, what did you do? Sir, you asked me to bring a glass of water. I brought the glass of water. You took the water. I went back and kept the glass in the kitchen. No. Tell me, what did you do? And he kept on repeating, and they kept on teacher asking, no, but you tell me, what did you do? Finally, the student said, now I know what did I do. Okay, what did you do? Sir, you asked me to bring a glass of water. I brought the glass of water. You took the water. You gave the glass to me. While going back to the kitchen, I threw just a few drops on the ground. The moment he said just a few drops, he got his Zen. 2,000 years ago, there was no shortage of water. 5,000 people, a settlement was called a Nagar, a city. Why was that teacher so conscious of what will happen in 2020? Water will be scarce, water will not be available, that he was raising the consciousness 2,000 years in advance of a problem? That is the sign of wise societies. Wisdom lies not in digging a well when there's a fire. Wisdom lies in creating our system fireproof, systems of collective action so that we can come to rescue to each other, creating water bodies and keeping them clean and available when we need for them for any other action. That is the wisdom. So this country and this culture has produced enormous wisdom for sustaining environment, conserving nature, nature within, nature outside. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. I think, sir, you made a couple of very good points and takeaways for us, and I'm going to recap that briefly. One, when we talk about circular economy, it's not merely the words. It's really ingrained in our culture. I mean, what you mentioned as a childhood experiences, I mean, each one of us could relate to that. And from culture of circularity, I think we're very proximate to it as a nation. And I think that kind of gives us a lot of hopes. Reuse, repair, refurbish, remanufacture, all of that, it's something that we've been doing it as a natural thing of course. As a matter of course, we've been doing that. And I think that actually kind of encourages us. Sir, two other takeaways from what you mentioned in terms of crowdsourcing of ideas. Sir, here is what we've already done, and we will open it up for everybody right now, is that there is a portal called the flute.in that we created, which is an innovation capture portal. You have an idea, you just put it up there as an idea. There is a simple box in which you mention. At the back end, we will evaluate that idea, and by step, we'll guide somebody from an abstract idea to concretized innovation or intellectual property rights. Sir, in terms of this West and whatever you mentioned to help the circular economy, and I think the reusability of West and innovative ideas around that, it's something straight away we are willing to open. And I had a brief chat on the sides with Jaideep while you were talking. We will probably come out with something even by the end of today or by the end of this seminar, given everything being put right. The second thing that we are doing, and where I would request you and I would request everybody who is panelist here or who is an audience here to join us, we are already decided to come out with a publication which will focus around, how the world is now looking at COVID and post-COVID. What are the learnings for us? So this will be digital publication, plus we'll try and print out some hard copies for it. We are going to reach out to at least about 20 people, with each one, like I had reached out to Mr. Damodaran, I've reached out to Dr. Modak, and they have in principle said, yes, they will contribute. We're going to come out, that's our commitment, sir. When you said 115 people, 105 people writing 500 words, sir, it's our commitment that we will bring out this publication in a matter of about 4 to 6 from today. You've been a motivator to generations of people. Everybody who's come out of IIM Ahmedabad, and most of them are at the helms of the affair in Indian corporate sector today. You've been motivated to them, sir. We can't let you down, no ways.
Thank you. I'll take leave now because we have another webinar at 4:45. Yes. So all the best to all of you. I'm sorry I'm going to miss many of you listening to many, but You said that you will make a report of it. Kindly do share the report with me. Goodbye.
Thank you very much, sir.
Happy Environment
Thank
Day.
you, sir.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, sir.
I think that was kind of a, yeah, Mehak, you want to,
Yeah, not a problem. Go ahead, sir.
please go ahead, please go ahead.
Yeah. Now I'd like to introduce our next speaker for the evening, Shabnam Siddiqui. I would like to introduce her. Shabnam Siddiqui is Director of Center of Excellence for Governance, Ethics and Transparency at the UN Global Network India. Shabnam is an academic practitioner with 23 years of experience. She's a great believer and practitioner of collective action and believes that the private sector plays a critical role in attainment of the Sustainable Development Goal. Welcome, Shabnam. And now I'll request Shabnam to share her insight on 2020 theme, that is biodiversity.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much to Legasis for inviting me to this webinar and on such an opportune day, the World Environment Day. The theme, as you know, for this year is It's Time for Nature, and it's time for nature like never before. When we talk of biodiversity, we essentially talk about a whole lot of species, both flora and fauna that kind of exist in the world and cohabit together. But in the recent decades, there's been a lot of biodiversity loss, both on land and in the sea. And the very fact that this particular Environment Day, we are focusing on what we can do to arrest that biodiversity loss, how is it the time for nature, and what we can put back into nature is something that we have been discussing. Briefly about the organization that I represent, the Global Compact Network India is the UN initiative for businesses. So essentially, we are a membership-based organization organized around 4 issue areas: human rights, environment, labor, and anti-corruption. And the idea is that business and other civil society stakeholders can work year on year on these issues and principles to take things forward. I'm also myself personally avid wildlife photographer. I go to the jungles as often as possible, and experiencing firsthand the impact of nature, what is happening and what needs to be done is most important. So within the Global Compact, what we have been trying to do is, as Dr. Gupta was saying before, that a number of individuals are doing initiatives at their own level. So within the Global Compact, how we can look at collective action, businesses and other stakeholders coming together and taking things forward is what we're looking at. And we are promoting business stewardship for biodiversity conservation, BBAI. The idea is that a lot of the businesses that are working already on conservation can join hands, share strategies, share challenges, and also in some places together work for the betterment of nature. And we have had multiple stakeholder sessions throughout the country, looking at the kind of geographical area that they can work on and the issue areas. So one thing I think that emerged within our discussions, for example, was working on mangroves. So whether a lot of businesses work on mangroves plantation already, but what are the lessons learned, how we can work together is kind of, so we want to come up with these flagship lighthouse projects, which then can be emulated throughout the country. And when we talk about collective action, what we're trying to do is we are trying to get businesses to be at the helm of affairs, but at the same time work with great civil society organizations that have been already working in this forum, academic institutions, individuals, academia, and everybody to how we can take things forward. So I think even this particular webinar, which has people from experts from different domains, is an ideal kind of a scenario where we can explore collective action and take things forward. A Global Compact is available. We are a platform, we are a network for different organizations to work together. And along with the United Nations Environment Program, we hope to make businesses more responsible. And we also want businesses to share more, because many a times they are doing interesting initiatives, but it doesn't come out as publicly in a public domain. So how we can then showcase is something that we are working on. So I think getting businesses into the discussion, talking about collective action and a business Alliance for Biodiversity Conservation is where the Global Compact would be jumping into this domain. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Shabnam. Thank you very much. I think, uh, look, I just wanted to ask you one thing. What's been your experience? And I think, as the kind of Global Compact Network of India is actually an interface with the corporate sector, if broadly I were to put it that way. So how has your experiences so far been with the corporate sector when we talk about sustainability, when we talk about SDGs? Is enough happening in that space for us to kind of look at you know achieving the targets by 2030 broadly?
So I think, honestly speaking, it's all like, as the Global Compact believes, most of the work that we are doing is a communication on progress. So it's year-on-year progress that we're talking about. A lot is happening within the corporate sector, but still so much more remains. Within the SDGs, what the corporate sector has done is they have become promoters of one particular SDG. For example, when I talk about biodiversity conservation, one or two industry will say that they are leading projects on life on land. Somebody's working on anti-corruption. Somebody's working on labor and innovation. So multiple corporates are definitely working because now it's mandatory. So kind of SDG reporting is part of your business reporting. So the mandatory aspect has really helped businesses as well as the competition aspect, because most listed companies that are part of our network really do want to shine out in terms of to outperform each other in terms of SDG development. So things are happening, but there is always room for improvement, and that particular room is always the biggest in the house.
Oh, okay. Of course. I mean, you very well said that. I think the one other small little thing that I wanted to kind of ask you is on a personal level. I think you've been going across the world on your safaris, and kind of you're very proximate to the flora and fauna. Have you seen any change in positive direction over the period of past, let's say, 5 years, so to speak?
I've seen change, but I wouldn't call it positive, because depends. So, like, for example, in India, when I've traveled around different parks, and I don't necessarily frequent only tiger parks, although like, I'm a cat person, so I do cat photography maximum, both in India and abroad. But so there has been challenges, but uh, the essentially it's the entire landscape is diminishing. Like, even if you see today's or yesterday's statement by the forest minister in Maharashtra itself. So for us as human species, all land is development land, and whatever is not at the moment utilized for development can be used for any other extracurricular activity. So I think many people do not take forest and green spaces seriously. If they had, this entire COVID phenomena perhaps might not have happened. Because, for example, even in March, when we were in a breakneck speed, trying to do all these international events, February, March are the heaviest months in terms of events in the NGO and business sector. And suddenly everything coming to a stop, all national, international travels, and we survived, right? So it wasn't that difficult. But as a collective conscious, if we had to decide that we will not travel for a week, or will not, we look after our emissions, that would not have been possible. So because I think we have not been looking after nature, I think nature said that I have, and I can, and I will look after myself. So like, we had been put to a stop. But in the last 5 years, I don't think things have been good in India. And a small example, like the most recent cyclone that came in Kolkata, Amphan, I think if you go dig deeper, it was predominantly because of the mangroves, that the kind of devastation that could have happened has not happened. So we underestimate the role of the entire biodiversity in keeping the balance in nature, because once it goes out of balance, then it is beyond our human-controlled, a small virus, I think, whose dimension I tried to figure out, but it was so tiny that you cannot even figure out the dimensions, has essentially put the entire world on a hold. So imagine if something big were to happen, as a race, we would be wiped out. So I think it's time for us to wake up. It's time for nature, and nature has to take over.
Thank you very much, Shabnam. Thanks a lot for being with us. I know you have a hard stop and you have another kind of a call with your HQ. Thanks for joining our webinar, and wish you a very happy Environment Day.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. See, just we're just trying to move the bits and pieces here. I think we've had Professor Gupta talking about the circular economy and what does it take in terms of action plan. Very simply put, what is it that each one of us need to do? We have Shabnam, who's kind of told us what, from a point of view of sustainability, what are these SDG goals, where they are moving towards, and her personal experiences. I think just moving ahead, many a times we have realized that when we talk about circular economy, when we talk about biodiversity getting adversely affected, it's many a times it does so happen that you talk about environment impact of a particular project, you talk about environment impact assessment at the very beginning of commencement of any project. And I'm going to request Mr. Rajesh Bagga to kind of come here and help me identify as to why does it happen always, almost always, when the things break out, uh, people start talking about it. I think the Ridley turtles being the example. Mr. Bagga? And I think I'm also going to welcome Sunita ji. Sunita ji, thank you very much for joining us. I will just come back to you. Thank you.
No problem. No problem.
Thank you. Thank you, Suhas, and welcome everyone. I think what Professor Gupta mentioned about valuing the cost of the waste that you're generating in every product and in every supply chain is a massive statement to make, and we realize the impact of that on a day-to-day basis. I remember one of my global chairmen visiting India, and after having visited a few villages, so there was a talk going on about market shares of our products vis-a-vis those of the competitors. So he says you don't have to labor hard to find your market shares, because outside every village, if you see the waste heap, you know what the market share is. It's not very difficult to figure out. I think that was a telling statement where the corporates possibly over time have become blind to the impact and the footprint they leave on nature. And these are things that I figured out when I started photography, wildlife photography, like Shabnam did about 10 years ago. And unlike her, I do both cats and birds. And birds take you to a far wider place. And I must say I've birded and photographed in all 5 continents. So I have some perspective on this. And I'm very hopeful, Shabnam, unlike you, because I find a lot of youngsters and children at safaris. And I think the impact on them of the devastation that we have done in the past is there to behold. And I'm sure they will be far saner, and they will be far more telling in their response. Be that as it may, let me come to projects before Suhas cuts me off.
No, sir. Sir, I'm going to come back to you, because I think that discussion on the projects, we would need, enough time to talk about it. I will come back to you. I'm taking the liberty of cutting you here, because I think I know Sunita ji has a hard stop at about.
You should. I think you should. I think.
Absolutely. I'm so sorry, everybody. I wish I could join you and stay longer and listen to all this. I have had quite a World Environment Day today. I have been on one thing after another, and I still have 4 more to go. So I am really sorry, but I'm so glad I'm part of this, at least for a little while. Thank you for asking.
Thank you very much for joining us, Sunita ji. Thanks for, out of the blue, I kind of invited you to this discourse and discussion. We have more than about 100 audience from Indian corporate sector today. I think Bombay Stock Exchange joins us in this webinar. I mean, we just heard Professor Gupta ji on circular economy and the manner in which the corporate should be responding to the need of the hour today. Probably it's a bit too late, too little, but still, I think we can make a difference with the positive optimism with which he's kind of communicated to us, and we have taken 2 initiatives. One, we've taken to kind of come out with a publication on this issue, on COVID related issues, and what does it take now beyond 2020 for the issues which are very critical in terms of nature recuperating, circular economy, green chemistry. So we've decided to do that publication. Secondly, from the innovation point of view, which is also very passionate to Professor Gupta ji, we already have a portal called the flute.in, and we're going to look at that as an idea capture. Bhavgana ji, thank you very much. I'll come back to you. So Sunita ji, I think that's the second aspect is really, I think, focusing around the flute.in, which is kind of picking up abstract ideas and concretizing them. I think that's another commitment that we have undertaken. But we would like to hear you, because in India there are very few people in this space that have the kind of experience that you have, that have the kind of insight that you have. Sunita ji, I'm not going to waste too much of time, and I will request you to share your views. Thank you very much.
Suhash. And I think in India, we have some amazing people, many people like me all over the country who have amazing insights and a lot to share. But let me share with you some of the issues. I totally agree with the issue that I heard about circular economy, about making sure that we can reuse and every part of our economy becomes a product. But what is also very clear is that we are sitting right now at a very crucial juncture, Suhash, and which is what I think everyone is expressing as well. I mean, we've had COVID-19, the lockdown because of COVID-19, and for once in our lives, we have actually seen blue skies. I mean, I don't think all the work, I have been a clean air campaigner for the last 25, 30 years. I don't think anything that we have done brought us the scale of the difference as we saw in the last 2 months. And the data is very clear. We've had up to 80% reduction in pollution in our cities. We've been able to hear the birds sing. It almost feels as if nature is reclaiming her space once again. And between blue skies and the sights of Himalayas from many people's windows, I mean, it's sublime. There is no other word to use. It is sublime. And it is such a tragedy that we as city people have to actually say this, that, a blue sky is something which is so pleasurable. I mean, it should be taken for granted, but that's what we saw. But the fact also is that it came at enormous cost, and this cost is not sustainable. I mean, the lockdown has led to enormous disruption, and more than that, it has led to a complete collapse of the economy, but most importantly, the livelihoods of the poor. And that's not acceptable. That's clearly a cost that nobody is asking us to pay. I, as an environmentalist, am not saying lockdown must continue because we've got clean air. That's not acceptable. But the question is, if we had clean air because of the lockdown, can we have clean air after the lockdown is over? And that's the big issue that is out there today. And it's out there today, and with your audience, I think I can say that very clearly. It's out there today because it's a very real challenge. It's not going to be easy. The fact is, we have adopted an economic globalization model in which we discount the cost of labor and we discount the cost of environment. I mean, today we want to compete with China. And we want to compete with China because China has become the sweatshop of the world. And we want to be able to change our own labor conditions so that people can work longer. We want to be able, then we'll have to discount the cost of environment. Already where I go to many places, and I have been crying hoarse saying, listen, industry today must recognize that the small and medium scale industry today in the country is growing because of the fact that it can discount the cost of labor and environment. When we put any regulation on industry in the authorized industrial areas, industry finds the cost too high and moves to unauthorized areas. And I'm not blaming them. It's a part of competition. If today I tell NCR Industries, which is what we have been asking for, please move to gas, please move to natural gas, give up coal. How do they give up coal? It's 8 rupees a kg as compared to 43 rupees in gas. It's not viable. It's just not viable. And they tell me, and they tell us, and that I think is a very valid point, they would say, fine, you close us down, but how do we compete? Because all over India, pet coke is even available, which is even cheaper. And we are competing with China, where every one of these costs is never even looked at. They have no human rights issues. They have no environment issues. They have no labor issues. So I think that's the fundamental question. And I think, Suhash, for me, and we want to have clean air. And I believe we can have both. So I want to lay out in a few minutes what I think is possible. Firstly, I think the lockdown and COVID-19 has brought us one very important lesson. It has made the invisible in our city more visible. We had never thought about migrant labor at the scale that we are seeing it. I have been talking about migration for the last 1 year because with climate change, the poor are being forced out of their homes. We have also been talking about migration because when I go to the unauthorized colonies of Delhi to look at the pollution, or I go in UP or Haryana or Rajasthan, I find the living, working conditions of labor appalling. Okay, there is massive migration that was happening, but these were invisible people. Now they are visible. The question today is that these people are going home, and therefore, can we really think about reinventing, reworking the local rural economy and investing in it big time so that there is more choice that people have? They don't have to leave because they're pushed out. They leave because there is the pull of the city. And the other part of this is, can we actually think of, rather than having a consumption-led model, can we think of a production and environment and labor-led model of growth, which really means that for once, can we pay the price? I've been reading, the best thing with the news right now is when you read how employers are wanting their labor back, and they're talking about flying them back, or they're talking about paying them extra wages. Now we know all that will mean that the cost of production will go up. So if the cost of production goes up, can we actually think about a different growth model? And that's a very, very important question, not just for India, but the world. And the last point on the list I want to give to you is really our ask list. We have just put out a list of what we want from government in terms of what we are calling a green economic stimulus. And let me list it out because I think your industry, the participants in this group may find it interesting. One, we are asking that BS6, this is for air quality improvement. BS6 emission norms have come into play, fuel has come into play. Massive cost has been incurred by industry and by refineries to impure fuel and technology. We also know that the difference between a BS6 vehicle and a BS4 vehicle is 90% reduction in emissions when it comes to heavy duty vehicles, trucks. And we also know that trucks and heavy duty vehicles contribute 60% of the emissions in our cities. So we are asking government, come up with a financial stimulus package in which we can phase out the old dirty vehicles and phase in BS6 trucks. Now, CSC has never done anything like this. We have always shied away from talking about scrappage, or because we think that's that's industry's benefit. Why should we talk about it? But here, there's a clear win-win. There's a win-win for the economy. There's a win-win for clean air. The second thing we're asking for is a financial stimulus package for public transport. We are asking for rolling stock to be paid. We are asking for investment in metro, tram, rail, walk, and cycle, because we have to reinvent mobility so that we can move people and not vehicles. And so financial stimulus for that. Along with that, we are saying battery and HCNG, hydrogen CNG. I don't know if you know about this, but we have been investing in a hydrogen CNG project in Delhi, and that will make CNG even cleaner. So we are saying those things have to be invented, pushed, and funded. So that's the stimulus we're looking for. The fourth thing we're looking for is to bring natural gas under GST. We are saying that you have got a perverse policy today where you are incentivizing dirty fuel coal over a clean fuel, which is gas. And the fact of the matter is that only 2 states, Gujarat and Maharashtra, benefit from this tax. So what we are saying from the VAT or the state tax, so we are saying remove it, bring it under GST, and provide a level playing field for clean fuel. We're also asking for imported coal to be brought under OGL, out of OGL. So we want coal out. And the last thing we've asked for, and I know this will shock a lot of people, but we are saying we want all power plants to meet the 2015 emission standards. And if they don't, we are calling for a policy called the first run policy. We are saying only those power plants that meet the emission standards should even be allowed to.
Yeah.
So that's my huge demand. I thought I would take this opportunity to share it with you. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you very much. And I'm going to request Mr. Bagga. Mr. Bagga has been general counsel for Tata Motors. He's been in power sector for past 5 years, and both of us know that we have worked not only in the automobile sector but the power sector as well. So of all the 6 demands, I think if there is one person from corporate sector who can give us an overview is Mr. Bagga. Sir, I'm going to come back to you in terms of all these 6 issues, right from the BS6 emission norms to actually the power plants being compliant for 2025 emission norms.
2022. 2022, don't push it further, please. They've already got a 7-year extension, okay? They were supposed to meet them in 2017. And now it's a Supreme Court order. So they cannot. And Tata Power is one of the power plants that has still not even ordered the FGD. Along with Adani, along with all that, I can give you. Just published the list.
Everybody, I know.
Sorry.
Ma'am, I worked with Enron and I've been in the power sector for a long time to understand this.
So you know what I'm talking about.
I'm going to request Mr. Bagga on his views on all the 6 demands. Pardon.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much. And it's always a pleasure to listen to Mrs. Narayan, and I think very, very wise and sane counsel there. And I actually tend to agree with her on most of those points. I think BS6 and phasing out of old vehicles is what actually the industry is asking for as well. And I think the government has made a definite but small beginning in announcing certain incentives for e-vehicles. I think they need to go a little further on liquid fuel vehicles as well. And I think that will be a real challenge, because even today, I think all of us know that in the rural areas, even older vehicles could ply. So that, I think, needs to be fixed. But that, I'm told, and I think that's at the core of it, is the supply chain of fuels and setting it up for all areas, which is really the hurdle. But I think that is something that is surmountable, and the government will possibly have that done. all the automobile companies, though I'm no longer in the sector, but I have been involved in both sides of battery development and implementation, as well as on EV development and implementation. I think they're working very hard to push the EV space in India, and I think that is very, very welcome. Some of the EVs have started hitting the road already. The challenge is to bring the cost down and make it a natural choice for citizens, and also to set up electric charging facilities across the country. And I think that should be a good thing, which should happen, I think, in the 1 or 2 years to come. I think we should see massive progress on that front. The coal part and the natural gas part is a very tricky one, because there has been a lot of public investment in coal sector and in power plants. And ma'am, I must, it's a rather uncomfortable thing, but the power plants of the private sector actually have, most of them have enhanced newer technologies, but it's really the culprit. And I think if you're staying in Delhi, please look at the power plants which are there in Delhi. The technology there and the emission levels there are of a far higher order, and the cost of power they are generating is also far, far higher. So I think it's a very endemic thing, and India imports so much of coal. So I think the present move by the government to allow mining and to bring down the, privatize the extraction of coal, which is mired in a whole lot of public sector malady and also in a whole lot of red tape, may help. I don't think it is it's possible to do away with coal, but yes, we should take steps to do away with coal as a fuel and possibly move to renewable energy like solar and wind, etc., etc. I'm sure she will possibly agree that it will take a lot of investment and time to clearly move away from coal. But yes, the newer technologies are far better than what has been installed. I'm sure she's wanting to come back.
Yeah,
so please
I want to come back to this. Thank you, Mr. Bagga. I mean, I love this discussion. This is exactly what we need. We need a conversation. We need to understand, where do we agree, where do we disagree. We will always have differences, but we must converse. So let me, Mr. Bagga, we have just published a new report, and I'd really encourage all of you to take a look at it. If you go to our website, you will find it. It's a report which puts together the implementation status of the 2015 emission norms in the power sector. And we have gone plant by plant, and we've actually divided up in terms of the plants which are compliant, and compliance means the plants which have ordered the FGD. Now, as you know, FGD takes about 2 years to install. So if you need to meet the 22 deadline, you should have ordered it by now. So then we have listed plants which have only, which are still reviewing or in the feasibility stage. And we have listed plants which have not even started. And unfortunately, Mr. Bagga, and I have written, because I expect differently from all the private players, actually you will find, and what is good news, is that NTPC is taking a clear leadership this time on the implementation of the standards. NTPC has actually gone ahead and ordered the FGDs. They have installed particulate traps, NOx control. They are looking at various technologies to try and bring down the cost and do good NOx control. We see leadership coming from the public sector of NTPC, and that's good news. That's very good news. But what is sad, and we have listed, you know us, we are not very nice people, and I'm not expected to be nice, okay? So in our book, we have actually listed all the companies which are what we are calling the companies which are laggards. And we've listed them by name, and this is official data. Please be clear, this is data from CEA. Central Electricity Agency or Authority actually puts together the data on where are the plants in terms of implementation. Now, when you told me that the plants in Delhi and NCR are actually more polluting, that's not true. Delhi has closed down its last coal-based power plant. We are also very clear that you have CLP plant, the Chinese owned plant in Jhajjar, which is pretty good, very efficient. Also has SOx control, NOx control systems. You also know that NTPC has invested and is improving. There's a lot of pressure. And under the graded response action plan this winter, what is very clear and an agreement between us and the power producers is that whichever plants have not gone ahead and bought that equipment will shut down over winter, as Badarpur shut down. So there is a lot of pressure, Mr. Bagga, and people are moving towards it. But I'm still saying it's not enough. Now, where we are, therefore, what we are coming up with, see, the power sector, and Suhash, if you worked in it, the power sector is a unique sector. You can't really close it down, okay? So you can threaten everything. You can say Section 5 laga denge, penalty laga denge, band kar denge. अरे कौन बंद करेगा किसी पावर प्लांट को? कोई सवाल ही नहीं बनता. फिर यही होगा कि अच्छा आपकी इलेक्ट्रिसिटी कट जाएगी. So people know that it's not possible, and that is why there's also this enormous resistance. So we are coming up with a strategy which we have proposed to government called the first run. You have a must-run strategy with renewables. We are asking for a first-run strategy. We are simply saying that only those plants which have upgraded and installed the emission system should be allowed to sell power. So we are providing an incentive for the first runners. And that's a good way to do it. I think that's a market way to do it. It's actually a way to provide incentives for companies which have taken the hard task of putting in the investment to upgrade their systems, because there is a cost. But then the reverse of it is the cost to health. And that's what we have to balance. So I really enjoyed that, Mr. Bagga, but I hope you understand where we are coming from on it as well.
Always do, ma'am. So nice of you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think I'm going to just kind of ponder on a couple of points that you made, especially from the power sector and in terms of supercritical technologies and FGDs. I think few of the power plants, at least the independent power plants who were part of the ultra mega power project policies, would actually welcome this move and shut down their plants today, because I think we have seen this. We have seen this. Happening because of the force majeure related issues and the pass-through cost and the kind of tariff.
I've seen all that.
Not being commercially viable today, and they might welcome this move to shut them down. And I think from a commercial perspective, I think largely the kind of consumers are going to lose out because
there's excess power. I think let's be clear about this, Suhash.
Yes.
I mean, power plants will love to shut down, but I don't know why they're in the business then. Okay,
yes.
Are they in the business of real estate? I mean, let's be clear about that. Okay, yes. I mean, I understand that, but they've got. I mean, we have gas plants which are stranded assets. 20,000 megawatts of gas plants are stranded assets today. I mean, to me, it's a criminal thing because that is clean power. So I would definitely like to see how we can incentivize all that. Suhash, I have another one to go to, another meeting to go to, but it's clear we have a lot to discuss. Correct. And I wish I had more time, but clearly we need to organize something at some other time when it's not June 5th. Sure. And we can actually spend some time getting to the core of our understanding on these.
No, definitely. And I would take initiative in terms of having this dialogue. I would take the liberty of coming back to you and actually putting this dialogue together, not only from the PowerPoint perspective, but also what you mentioned in terms of the production-based movement towards production-based economy. While the world is talking about consumer-oriented economy, and there is a lot of push even from the policy makers to say that today, break down the sectoral understanding and push it towards more consumer-oriented economy. I think we need to have a dialogue there. Thank you very much for coming and gracing the occasion. Wish you a very happy Environment Day. And thanks for joining us on this webinar. I will come back to you and we will have a more constructive dialogue with a lot of time to
I look forward to discussing it with Mr. Bagga again. Thank you. Yes, thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah, so I think we've had some interesting discussions till now. And I'm going to come back and with this thread, and I'm going to come back to, sir, I will look at Mr. Shankar and Girish. And I want to have this, conversation going. Mehak, you wanted to say something, or?
Yeah, I would like to introduce all the panelists.
Sure, please go ahead.
Yeah, now we will move on to the next segment where we are going to have an interesting panel conversation. Let me introduce all the expert panelists. Shankar Venkateshwaran. To read about him, his experience spans in consulting NGOs and corporate sustainability. He works on the issue of the role of business and society. He was head of sustainability for the Tata Group, and he's currently chair of Oxfam India and part of the founding team of EQ, an ESG-focused financial services startup. We welcome you, Mr. Shankar. Next expert speaker with us is Mr. Girish Joshi. He's
Hello.
Chief Trading of... Hello?
Hello. Hello.
Yes, Mr. Joshi.
I think I'm facing some problem. Hello.
I can hear you, Mr. Joshi.
But I can't see anything. Okay.
Can you see us?
No. One sec. Yeah. Okay. Sure. Sorry.
Welcome, Mr. Joshi. Yeah.
Yes.
He's Chief Trading Operations and Listing Sales at Bombay Stock Exchange BSE. He was also a member of Corporate Bonds and Securitization Advisory Committee of SEBI of India. He represents BSE in Sustainability Working Group SWG of World Federation of Stock Exchange, that is WFE, and also Sustainable Stock Exchange Initiative of United Nations. Welcome, Mr. Joshi.
Yeah.
Our next panelist is Mr. Rajesh Pagga. He is founder of Yuhina Law Advocates and Consulting. As Suhas mentioned, he has been Group General Counsel with Unilever, Tata Motors, and Reliance, with experience in various sectors of industry, both in India and abroad. He has also been closely involved with development of regulations with government. We welcome you, sir. Next on the panel, we have Basuri Swaraj. Ms. Basuri Swaraj has been practicing as an advocate since 2007 and with the experience of over 12 years in all the branches of litigation, civil, criminal, commercial, tax, and constitutional matters. Presently, along with her private practice, she is also serving the state of Haryana as an additional Advocate General before the Honorable Supreme Court of India. Welcome, ma'am.
Thank you very much.
Over to you, Suhas.
Thanks a lot, Mehak. I think I'm going to request for you see, all this is what we're talking in terms of environment protection, in terms of biodiversity is all possible if there is money, there is investment, there is some innovation support. And from that perspective, I'm going to request, Mr. Girish Joshi of BSE and then Shankar to kind of chip in terms of what are the current issues, what are the current trends, where do you see this money getting invested in this sector? Girish bhai, over to you.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. I think in the beginning, Mr. Gupta and I'm now recently Madam Narayan and even Mr. Bhaga has set the right tone because COVID has given opportunity on, and this is the right day, environment day, where we can revisit the business and financing model for business enterprises. And of course, if you see, in this, I think Madam said many things which were invisible have become visible. And some of those visible were social enterprises. We came to know so many social enterprises are there in India or across the world, which are doing so many good things. But how do you support them? Of course, in India, big corporates are having philanthropic approach. You do a lot of activities to support such social cause. Earlier, even the government has mandated CSR spend 2%. But when you say enterprises, means they are independent enterprises, they have to work on their own. They will have their own business model and more discretion, more governance through reporting. That's the way, then it will create more innovation. Because if we are just getting charity and grant from corporate and doing something, it may not create the scope of innovation, which what I think Mr. Gupta said in the beginning, reverse engineering. reverse engineering is needed, and which is will create more force on the reverse supply chain, and accordingly you start giving treatment to the waste. And we have so many brains in India, innovative enterprises are there. So where to get money for, how to get money for them? And to just give one highlight, of course, BSE had come out with BSE Sanman. It's where no such enterprise is not a social enterprise, but NGO can list themselves, and companies under the CSR funding can give money to such NGOs which are having good uh, practices which will help in the waste management or education or women empowerment, children education. That sort of model is there, but still it is coming under CSR model, and where you can use BSE Sanman platform of BSE list. They will have their own process. Corporate will do evaluation, on-site inspection, off-site inspection, surveillance, whatever way the way. It's like a matrimonial website. No, you married, right? Depending on the corporate how they want to fund it, how they want to monitor it. And you can again take the experts of service of experts who will try to supervise the monitoring on behalf of those corporates if they don't have bandwidth. So that is extra facilities which we give on our BSE Sanman platform. But I think now we have to move ahead because COVID has given us insight. No, this is okay. This was going on. Now we have to create a social enterprise. Fortunately, I think our finance minister had announced social stock exchange in the last budget, and I think it is first it's a discussion paper. Report has come just now, released in June 1st, signed by Isat Hussain, former Tata Group official. And I mean, many of you would have gone through the social stock exchange report. It gives us the broad landscape in which such social enterprises can raise money, or what are the some tools or how it will be facilitated. It says that you use a existing platform, the stock exchanges. There are two kind of enterprise: for profit, non-profit. I don't want to go into detail because it's a separate detailed discussion. But where it says that we have to support these enterprises and money has to come. Now, money will come from where Subhas has started the discussion. Who will give money and what is the incentive for them? Of course, anyone who wants to give money, they need some incentive in the form of tax benefit, tax incentive, which this report of social stock exchange is talking about. But money which has to come mainly for a good cause, or people still want to say no for these enterprises, even if payoff is less compared to the return which is coming from the blue chip companies. What are those and how to get money for such investors? For that, there is a concept called social venture funds, capital funds. There are venture capital funds who collect money from such enterprises, such investors, HNIs investors, and put money into these enterprises, because these enterprises are having good business model. Only thing they are looking for good visibility and good flow of money. So the social stock exchange will definitely drive this in the near future. Till it is being rolled out, what is how we can fill the gap in between. So where I am coming from, like no, we have also a bond platform, and BSE bond platform. So many companies raise money, and there are we have observed that there are companies which are using debt capital. In the means they are a venture capital fund in the form of debt, and they also raise money, and onward they do lending to this such enterprises, and they are doing lending to some even social enterprises or innovative enterprises. We call in the word impact investing. So this is one platform where you can raise money. We also have a platform called SME platform exchange, where such companies can raise equity capital from the investors, and it does not require much. Means you can even get listing with even 3 crore. You can raise 3 crore money and get listed on Bombay Stock Exchange, and you list on SME platform, and after a few years you can migrate to main board. So it's another platform. But here again, just wearing the devil hat, the trend in the investors of India is to chase the pure yield. How much you are giving, benchmarking, or how much it will outperform to the benchmark index, or it will outperform Sensex or BSE 100 or 200. So how to cultivate that trend among the investors, and for which even Mr. Gupta said in the beginning, education. Education is the right thing, and that way it will, some of the investor would try to put that money and give money to such social enterprises. And coming to the such enterprise, whether they can get money from the abroad. It's a good idea. Their platforms are available because in this COVID-19 situation, many of the international transnational institutions like World Bank, African development institutions, they have raised a lot of money abroad, raise money in the dollars at very economical rate, and they do onward lending to such enterprises. And so the enterprises that get initial seed capital from such international sources, like IFC, World Bank also gives money to such enterprises. Scope is available. Only thing, how to create the platform. I'm just diversing something. I'm just putting another point to us. What happens now in terms of creating infrastructure? Because ultimately, who is going to take decision to provide or no capital is available to these enterprises? And yeah, when Mr. Gupta said no, he was in IIM. So then these IIM people, they go for campus recruitment. So they'll try to select the company which gives the highest salary, and they will not ask for the job profile. The company will say, no, how much return you are giving me, and your bonus is linked to that. If they have the benchmark, no, if this company, what is the impact of your activity on the economy or the environment, or how much waste you are going to generate, whether I can link my performance or my signing amount in these IIM or IITs, and that culture has to come. Then this entire chain will get affected. Till that time, this competition, the herd mentality, everyone wants to sign up with the top companies who are the pay masters, or they are mainly the financial institutions, and they will expect that you try to outperform the benchmark indices because your bonus is linked to that. Naturally, they try to put money into those entities which are creating more profit. Whether profit is coming from which activity, that is taking the secondary aspect. So I will just keep pause here, and we will take further discussion. Thank you, sir.
Sure. Thanks a lot, Girish Bhai. And I'm going to come back to you a little later in terms of understanding that people are talking that this social enterprise, the listing platform, will become a game changer in so far as environment, ESG or triple bottom line benefits are concerned. And I will
Yes,
come back to you. Uh,
yes, yes.
at this point in time, I would also want to kind of acknowledge, recognize, and say thanks to Mr. Bahuganaji, who is who has joined us. I think Mr. Bahuganaji has a phenomenal uh, kind of background, and the way in which, as a principal secretary of state of Madhya Pradesh, then now currently as a chairman of Center for Resource Management and Environment, he's been working phenomenally in this space since 1979, and I think his views on biodiversity are going to be very critical. But Bahuganaji, before coming to you, I would
Yeah.
like to put the thread which Girish Bhai has started in terms of investments and the
Okay.
monetary matters to Mr. Shankar, who currently is chairman of Oxfam, but chair of Oxfam, but actually has worked in private equity space. Um, a little fund called eCube is something which they are looking forward to. So, on two things that I'm going to request Shankar for his views. One, of course, from a private equity perspective, from funding of these enterprises and people who are working in this space, uh, what do you look at? How do you look at this space? Is there any opportunity? Is there any opportunity for somebody who wants to invest to get larger returns and not merely look at what the social impact is going to be, but at the same time get some returns on the investment now that the returns on investment have become a virtually a huge question mark? Is this the sector that's going to grow and kind of get a fillip? uh, Mr. Shankar, your views. And second, of course, on the business responsibility that the corporates today talk about, and how is that space shaping up after it was made mandatory for disclosure for top listed 1,000 listed companies on the stock exchanges? Mr. Shankar.
Yeah. Thank you, Shwas. What I try to do is to sort of weave these two because they're all interrelated issues. So I'm just going to try and weave this through and try and respond to both your questions. And then in case I don't do it adequately enough, just pull me up and I will try and address it at that point in time. So let me just sit back and from a point of view of trying to understand the whole notion of sustainability as it pertains to business. I think it's an important idea, and all these things get interconnected. I think that, traditionally, if you ask any CEO, what does sustainability mean to you in terms of business, she or he would say it means three things. That my business should be profitable, it should continuously be growing, and it should have longevity. It should be a 150-year-old business like the Tata is. So this is what defines sustainability to most CEOs. This is what I was taught in my MBA school and so on and so forth. And that's absolutely true. I think what has changed, especially in the last 20, 25 years, is the factors that enable a business to do this. In the past, it was about what technology you're using, what human resources you're able to get, what market shares you're able to sort of corner, and so on and so forth. Things that we're all traditionally taught in business school. I think what has changed in the last 20, 25 years, and you've talked about this before, is the idea that it is these three things will not happen only by focusing on purely what are called business issues. Survival and sustainability of a business also depends on the way you impact and are impacted by social issues and environmental issues. And that's the notion of a triple bottom line. So basically, we've reached a point where futures of a business and a business's ability to future-proof itself and to be profitable and grow and to live forever depends on how it manages all these three bottom lines. And that's very clearly the idea that is there. So therefore, to any business that thinks that if it just focuses on the profit bottom line and forgets everything else, is doomed to die sooner than later. So that's the context in which we need to look at this. Now, what has changed? Why has this notion changed? There are multiple global factors and national factors that have been playing, but I'll just name three of them, and some of them have been already discussed so far in this. One is the fact that you have growing inequality in this world, which means that you have the difference between the haves and the have-nots is growing, and that's causing its own kinds of pressures in terms of social pressures. Also, it is becoming evident that you need to broaden your customer base for a company, and you cannot just be selling products to a very narrow base of rich people. It has to be far wider than that. So for business, this kind of rising inequality is not a good thing. The second thing is the fact that you have resource scarcity. We live in a one planet world, but as we know, we are using our resources that we should be using in 1 year, we're using it by July. So that's your Earth Overshoot Day is now 29th of July. By 29th of July, you've used up all your resources and you're living on an overdraft. And although we've just, Elon Musk may have sent some people to the ISS, we are still far away from conquering any more planets. So we have this one planet and we are already on an overdrive. So how do we work within that? And that's where the notion of circular economy that Professor Gupta spoke about is relevant. The third, of course, is climate change. Now, climate change per se creates its own set of problems, but even aggravates all of these. It aggravates social inequalities. It aggravates accessibility to natural resources that you need for building businesses and products and services and so on and so forth. So you have all these pressures that are making businesses understand that they have to be focusing on the triple bottom line, and that's the only sustainable way of doing business. So it is not to me, it is not an option. I think businesses, the wise businesses, are the ones that realize that this is the future. This is not just the future, this is the present. And if we don't change the way we do our business, it's not going to happen. There are multiple pressure points that from this particular set of changes that are pushing companies into thinking like this. One is clearly regulation. I think regulations are getting tighter. We spoke about just when Sunita was speaking about the power plants and FGDs and renewables, that's classically regulated. BS6. All these are things that are pushing that agenda. So regulations are getting tighter, and they're going to only get tighter. And if companies don't predict a regulation and not just react to a regulation, those companies are going to be left behind. It's the equivalent of redesigning your engine rather than putting a catalytic conductor, because an end of pipe solution is never going to be the optimal solution. So it is about being able to predict the future of regulation and being able to deal with that. The second stakeholder that companies take most seriously are consumers. So regulators, obviously, consumers are the second. And I think that's where, again, there's a huge change that is happening, less visible in India, but certainly more visible overseas. And that has implications in India, which is consumers are saying, I'm going to buy products from companies that have a purpose. So purpose and business and excellence all go together. And so we are going to make those choices, and we're going to basically favor companies that have that. So that's the second stakeholder that's pushing businesses into thinking differently. The third is, of course, investors. And that comes back to the question that you were asking me. Now, investors are actually very strange animals. They are very human in the way they behave. There are two major emotions that drive investors, as we know, is fear and greed. Greed drives them into investing in things that give them greater returns. Fear pushes them away from anything that is high risk. And what is very clear to investors going forward is any company that does not understand sustainability, does not build it into its business model, that does not look at the future and looks at any costs that it invests in sustainability, not as a cost, but as an investment. If companies are not in that frame of mind, we are not going to invest in it. That's the change that is happening. So to me, I don't think sustainability requires new money. I think it is very clear that investors are saying our money is safe only in companies that actually understand this, that get this, and therefore that's whom we're going to invest in. Which is why you have things like principles of responsible investment, having investors who with about $80 trillion under management who follow principles of responsible investment. And about $20 to $25 trillion are currently deployed by investors who believe that ESG is not just good for the world, but it's just good for us. And I think there is increasing evidence, overwhelmingly, not so much done in India, not enough research is done in India, but certainly in the West, that companies with higher ESG performance also produce greater value. And that is the basic proposition with which we at EQ are coming from, and we believe. We don't think that investing in companies that have where we can improve ESG performance is actually going to be cost. We are very clear in our minds, and there is enough evidence for us to say that more we invest in companies that improve ESG performance continuously, because there's no end. It's a journey. It's not a destination. Companies that keep doing that will keep having improved value. They will provide greater value to their shareholders. They will provide greater value to their customers, to their employees, to all their stakeholders. And it will show up in their share prices. We are very clear about that. So I think, and we're not alone. There are several investors who believe in this. So I think that's the sort of short point in a very long way I wanted to make to your question, that I think investors are beginning to understand, and many of them are fully convinced, that unless a company understands and invests in sustainability right now, that company is not going to survive. And therefore, we are not going to invest in a company that's not going to survive for very long. And I think that's the sort of trend that is very clear. So companies that believe in responsible business, that look at sustainability as a core way of working and not just as a fashionable thing to do, are the ones that are going to survive, that are the ones that are going to get investments, and the ones that are basically going to succeed. I mean, history 20 years from now, I may not be alive, but I'm willing to take a bet that those companies that did not invest in ESG today are not going to be present 20 years from now. So I'll stop there and happy to take any questions.
Thanks a lot, Shankar, and we'll come back to you on the questions part of it. But I think you made very good points in terms of actually, looking at three stakeholders broadly. I mean, you looked at regulators, you looked at consumers, you looked at investors, and I think what does it take today to actually virtually saying that from an investor perspective, the ESG agenda is a mandatory for any company to survive and move ahead. I will come back to you that if I'm into the ESG sector, how do I get more money? That's a different discussion, but we will come back to that. On the regulation, I think I'm going to come back to Basuriji on the biodiversity related regulation, because there are lots of pros and cons. There are lots of discussions going on whether it is sufficient, not sufficient. I'm going to one very important point that came up is about regulation, and I think in Indian culture we have seen that the self regulations have hardly worked.
Yes.
Self regulations have not worked, although we may want to believe that we are very regulated society and we love self regulations. Except for a couple of sectors, we haven't seen self regulations working. Uh, and I think Shankar also made a point in terms of regulations as being one of the stakeholders is the regulator, and the regulations moving the paradigm, moving the needle of all good things happening on the environment towards positive side. I'm going to request Basuriji if on the Biodiversity Act itself, I think we have seen almost about 10 years now that have gone by on the Biodiversity Act. It's not a legislation that we would have loved to have in a sense. Probably it appears that it has come by virtue of the, the the kind of investment or a treaty obligation that fell onto us. Basuri, what's your take, and where do you see this the current status of the Biodiversity Act rules, regulations, the benefit access that regime that we've undertaken? Where do you see this currently, and where do you see this moving forward?
Thank you very much, Mr. Tulsapurkar. You're absolutely right. I agree with you on both points. One, that self-regulation cannot work in a country like ours, especially in India. An act of regarding biodiversity is very necessary because we are home to two of the most important biodiverse ecological systems in the world out of notified 25 of them, the Western Ghats as well as the Himalayas. You're also right that this particular statute was born out of the Convention on Biological Diversity, which India signed in Rio in 1992. It took almost a decade for India to actually give birth to this statute. And you're right, sir, that in this, the statute actually has a threefold aim. It looks at basically conservation, first of all, sustainable use, and third, equitable sharing. Now, equitable sharing of the benefits as well as the knowledge. In terms of the scheme of the statute, it actually, as you know, sets up three statutory bodies. It sets up of course, the National Biodiversity Authority, which is the apex body, and then it sets up the state level bodies, and finally the BMCs, which is going to be at the local panchayat bodies. The reason why I raise this particular statutory bodies is because that is where our failure has lied. The question is whether this legislation is adequate or not. Prima facie, my answer is it is. I know that is a point differing from what you genuinely believe. I believe that this statute actually works within the umbrella of the Environmental Protection Act. India has a framework of easily 7 to 9 statutes that work towards protection of our environment. We have a separate legislation for pollution to be tackled for air, pollution which adversely affects our water bodies. And therefore, this is one statute which actually brings in all of this together and takes help of other statutes to work. The problem in the statute is on twofold. One, over time, instead of conservation and instead of sustainable use, It has concentrated too much on equitable sharing. Now, on equitable sharing, instead of concentrating on knowledge, it has only become very myopic in concentrating on economic benefit. And therefore, the statute has started now working and it has become very revenue centric. That is where the problem is. The main problem why I know you believe that the statute doesn't work and why I believe it will eventually work is because a law is as good or as bad on its implementation. Now, the problem with this particular statute has been that a lot of the local panchayats had not set up the necessary BMC bodies, that data collection was a problem. And because data collection was a problem, the studies were inadequate. We were not able to really come up with necessary provisions for it. But something that I want to raise, and this is something that makes me very optimistic about this particular legislation, is that in March of 2020, there was a status report which was actually filed in one of the matters which is pending before the NGT. And these are some very encouraging statistics, if you just allow me to share with you. It actually said, this is the Chandrabhal Singh versus Union of India case, which is still pending before the NGT. And under the directions of the National Green Tribunal, over 2,43,499 BMCs, 95,252 PBRs have been established as compared to 9,700 BMCs and 1,000 PBRs that existed before of the filing of the application. And therefore, the People's Diversity Register is something which I believe is going to work towards actual success of this particular statute. Now, and therefore, I believe that this legislation works. Another reason why I believe that this legislation will work is if I can just chime in with Professor Gupta, Shankarji, as well as Mr. Bahugana. He said that biodiversity is part of our culture. So you're absolutely right. Not only is it part of our tradition, but even the new generation. If you look at, Shankarji raised, he said, other than regulators, investors and consumers are also stakeholders. Now, the consumers, if you see the millennial generation, the new value systems that are coming in are that of minimalism, that of ethical brands, that of actually not working with brands that have actually working towards consumerism. And even the so-called millennium brands, whether it's designers, whether it's your local production houses, ethical use, circular economy, green, sustainable growth of their products is something which has become almost a publicity point. And this is a very, very encouraging part. So I agree with Shankarji that a law can be as effective in not only in implementation, but also when the investor and the consumers also have a stake in it. The developing trends, not only in India, but even world over, whether it is our culture of the past, the traditional practices, and the cultures of minimalism and ethical practices, which I see in the current generation, both are very encouraging. And I think slowly and steadily, this statute will work. We don't need more legislation. We don't need more laws. We actually need change in practices. We need awareness. We need implementation. Self-regulation, I agree, does not work, but implementation can definitely be strengthened with awareness, which you saw even in lockdown. Thank you, sir. I know that there's paucity of time, so I'm going to end here.
No, thanks a lot, Basariji. I think thank you very much for making this point. And I think on the minimalization, I think you are probably the youngest of the lot here, all the panelists. And therefore, you're talking about minimalization as the Gen Next kind of embracing minimalization is an extremely heartening sign. And this kind of, although I have a bit of a problem on the implementation of the Biodiversity Act, I mean, you might have statistics in terms of whatever has been presented currently. The fact that if the implementation at the central level is left for a chairman who has been given a salary of 26,000 per month, I don't think that we will have biodiversity legislation being implemented like like a mission, and it ought got to be implemented like a mission. But that's my personal view, and I think we can debate about it.
So can I just weigh in on that point just for one second?
I just want to add on your this thing, biodiversity implementation. She has given a wonderful presentation. I totally agree with her. And what you have told about this 26,000, you know, you are very right. You know, there is no mechanism at the grassroots level to enforce this act, to implement this act. Only some here and there, somebody is given a chairmanship of biodiversity, and there is no fund, there is nothing. So with great difficulty now people are doing, but it is a good act and we should try to implement it.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for coming to my aid. Otherwise, I think I was running on a rough weather.
No, you are very...
But I'm going to come back to Mr. Bagga on 2 counts. Sir, I think minimalization has been one of our favorite topics to discuss even much before this webinar. And secondly, Mr. Baggaji, my unanswered question, I think people wake up too late in the day. They don't kind of seed the correct fundamentals at the time of seeking permission before the environment impact assessment statement is filed, or even social impact assessment statement is filed. And then it's probably too late and too little. Rajesh ji?
Yeah, yes, I too was surprised when Basuri raised the issue of minimalism. I thought it was only the domain of the people with gray hair that, you know, it
no hair, sir.
I take your point. Now, clearly, I think the COVID situation has, you know, I keep interacting with a whole lot of colleagues and ex-colleagues, and it is very, you know, heartening to see that the COVID situation has actually brought minimalism to the fore. We have learned that we can live with less, and you do not need to indulge to be happy. You know, so that realization, I think, will play itself out in terms of consumption. And there was a very interesting debate between the millennial marketeers who were worried that this could lead to a steep fall in consumption levels of certain goods which are considered clearly, you know, ostentatious, but let's see how it plays out. And they were thinking of ways and means of rejuvenating that, you know, desire in us. But be that as it may, I think about what was said about the Act. I think the Act has very noble intentions and provisions, only if there was leadership and guidance to implement it in a proper way. It talks of an assessment, it talks of feedback to people who are coming into that biodiverse area, and also in suggesting steps and means of ensuring that there is no overconsumption or exploitation. So all those mechanisms exist. It is only to be implemented, and I think we need to work with the government to ensure that that can happen. And I think if certain youngsters can be motivated to present an action plan on that act, that would be really nice. But coming to the bread and butter part of it, and that is projects. I've been involved in a whole lot of mega projects which have been installed in greenfield sites, and greenfield sites by their very nature are in areas which could be considered, you know, let's say vulnerable to biodiversity depletion. Now, if you're setting up, let's say, a mine or a power plant or an automobile plant or a, you know, plant which produces, let's say, detergents or cosmetics in a greenfield site, it was bound to impact some species or the other. And there is, I think, a lack of guidance and knowledge in that greenfield site. The district collectorate or the administration, the local administration, is really not aware of what the impact could be and cannot suggest ways and means to the corporate when it is envisaging the project or implementing. To my mind, when an industrial township or an industrial area is developed or is sanctioned by the government and is inviting bids for industry to come in, or the government sanctions a project of the industry to be set up in a particular area, I think that is the time when there has to be a meaningful dialogue between experts on biodiversity and the industry. I personally do not believe that the costs of ensuring biodiversity or minimizing the environmental impact of a project are that high that they cannot be borne by the project. It can be borne, and certain mechanisms can be set in place to ensure that there is no depletion beyond a controlled point. But those steps need to be factored into the budget of the industry. Yeah, Shankar, you want to say something? Your mic is off.
No, I just wanted, after you finish, Mr. Bhagat. Sorry.
Okay, all right, okay. So just give me 2 minutes, yeah. So I think there has to be a list of species that need to be protected in that particular area, what steps are needed on a species-wise basis, and what is the industry required to do. Then we will figure out what is the investment required, factor it into our viability plan, and ensure that it is done. And you can have review mechanisms about the progress the industry is making on a periodic basis and guide the industry through it. It is not insurmountable. And I think that is something that collaboration between the government agencies, the knowledge of the government agencies, which is fed to the industry, is of key importance. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Can I raise a question on Mr. Bhagat?
Yes, sir. I am now scared.
No. I am trying to actually help you out. Actually, not question. I am sorry. I just wanted to chip in what you said. You have given a very good point regarding industry. Chipping in. My problem is, when I was forest secretary, the knowledge of the people to prepare biodiversity register by the BMCs is very poor. Only forest department officer have got, but there are forest department officers are actually not the masters of all these hubs and stuff. Then now after the NGT, people have gone, and so technical expertise is lacking in actually listing out all these biodiversities so the industry can come. My suggestion will be that industry should come forward under CSR and link with the state forest department, especially in those areas where the huge biodiversity potential is there, and help them. And upfront, suppose you want to invest something, you have a linkage that you will access this biodiversity, and then benefit sharing will always be there with BMCs. So industry should come forward and give technical know-how to the forest department and to the state biodiversity board and the BMCs. It will be a win-win situation, and because of this link, we are not able to harness the biodiversity.
Sir, my point was not on accessing biodiversity. If I'm a person who's going to collect herbs, I know about the herb and I will take care. But my thing was, if I'm going to set a detergents plant near a wildlife park, then how will it impact the wildlife park was the issue. And the lack of knowledge on that was something that the departments could provide. Biodiversity, accessing herbs, there is no problem at all. That we know what to do.
Shankar, you wanted to make a point?
No, actually it was related to something that was being said earlier, but so I don't know whether it ties in necessarily with what was last said. Just another, since you're talking about biodiversity registers, I think a lot of very interesting work and help to the panchayats have been also been done by a lot of NGOs who understand this well. So I've seen some of those registers, and they're actually a very high quality. So I think it's not just companies who need to help create these registers, but I think we need to harness NGOs also to do that. But I was just, the point I was trying to make, which was a larger point, but also related to the whole issue around the laws and implementation, is also about the signaling that comes. I mean, the creation of a law is one signal, but how seriously that law is taken depends on a whole range of signals. So let me take an analog from what happens in a company. Now, if a company's investor is obsessed with quarterly returns, the CEO is bound to be looking at the short term. That's the very nature of it. So if you don't change the way the investor looks at it, and if you don't have a Paul Polman of Unilever who came and said, I am not going to do quarterly results. If you don't want to invest in my company, don't. If you're a long-term investor, if you're a value investor, then invest. Otherwise, don't. Similarly, the signaling that happens even in a larger macroeconomic national way is very important. For example, I think if the obsession with GDP, which I think is a very unhealthy obsession that we have, if that's the obsession we have, then it is GDP at any cost. It's the cost of the environment, it's the cost of biodiversity, it's the cost of people. So I think signaling becomes very important, and signaling also tells you how seriously everybody takes a law, especially at the implementation stage. So I think it's just human behavior. So whether it's a company CEO or whether it is somebody who's sort of implementing a law like a Biodiversity Act at any level, human behavior actually is very similar. So signaling, I think, is very important.
No, thank you very much. I think in that regard, I just want to narrate EU example. When EU talked about circular economy, that's probably the first region in the world that talked about circular economy and how do we look at the responsibility, sustainability, reuse, repair, regenerate, remanufacture from that perspective. And it came out with what is known as BATS, best available techniques as a reference point. Now, there was very, very, I remember the discussion was actually saying that should we regulate like what Indian regulators do, is at a micro level saying you got to do things which are purely based on rules, or should it be principle based? And I think when circular economy related regulations were passed by EU, I think one of the very critical things that they did is that as a guidance, we need the best available techniques for producing something, right? From design of the product to design, manufacturing, processing, everything. They said that we will look at what is the best available technique and we will give that to people as a BAT to be followed. And I think that's a very good example, because in India, although I think we're a completely diverse country, I mean, sporadically there have been excellences and world-class, world benchmarked to the world-class practices that emerge. Some of them are driven by responsible corporates. Some of them are driven by NGOs. Some of them are driven by individuals. But these best available techniques need to come forward. If we were to look at implementation of whether it is Biodiversity Act, or whether you want to look at circular economy, or you want to look at what is there currently on the green technology, you see, a green chemistry, I think the best available techniques being benchmarked there and being propagated everywhere would be probably one way forward to look at. Sorry.
Also, I think the other thing on circular economy is also the way one approaches it. I mean, it has to be system thinking. I don't think we do enough of system thinking. Most people who I hear who now speak about circular economy speak about it only from a recycling and waste management point of view. I think there's far more to it than that. One is what you said, design. Because if you don't design for circularity, the cost of taking out all the components end of life is so high, you'll never do it. So, for example, the Jaguar car is designed that you can, in 2 hours, dismantle the car and separate out all the parts in 2 hours. So the cost of dismantling is so low that it becomes worthwhile dismantling it. We did an experiment in the Tata Group when I was there, where we gave everybody printers. We gave 3 groups of people printers and said, isko khol ke rakho and just separate out all the parts. 3.5 hours and they still couldn't open that printer. So I think, designing is a very important thing. Absolutely. The other thing is the business model. One of the things I think is, SDG 12 on responsible production and consumption. One of the questions everybody asks is, are you asking companies to produce less? I think it's about business model, because it's not about necessarily asking them to produce less. It's about saying, how do you use that same production in a very different way? So if you look at what Caterpillar does, Caterpillar's traditional model is more equipment I sell, the more money I make. But now what they do is they actually lease out the equipment. They don't sell the equipment. So they lease out the equipment. They converted a product into a service. So their revenue comes from the lease rent, and then they ensure that that thing is well looked after, that parts are replaced by second-hand parts, so that you keep reusing the stuff in a reconditioned parts in a different way, which the owner, if I was an owner, I'll say, I don't want to use a reconditioned part, but you're not the owner. Caterpillar is making sure that that happens. Or Philips saying, we don't sell bulbs, we sell lighting. So that's, I think, the whole mindset around what you mean by circular economy also needs to move beyond just waste management, which is, I think, how it is often seen.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm great fan of looking at from the design stage. You talked about the extended producer's responsibility in terms of new revenue models that are coming up, and I think that's basically extended producer's responsibility coming to the forefront. I think there is a lot to be done in this space, and I think the time is not enough for us. No time would be enough for discussing on these issues, which are actually go to the fundamentals as well as change everybody's life, so to speak. I'm going to request Girish Bhai on that question that I had, and I'm going to come back to you. Would this listing of the social enterprises, both private companies or let's say listed companies, then obviously it would be listed companies. So private sector coming out with something that has benefits on triple bottom line in terms of social impact. Sorry.
No, I just wanted to excuse myself. I need to leave now.
Yeah, I know. We have a hard
so
stop.
My apologies, and thank you so much, everyone. It was a very enriching discussion. I really enjoyed it, and I really look forward to sometime sooner than later actually seeing you face to face rather than at the end of a screen. So I look forward to that. Thank you very much.
Bye, Sankar. Bye, Sankar.
So Girish Bhai, I think this platform that talks about listing of social enterprises and initiatives which are relating to social enterprises, would this become the game changer? Because either today enough is not being done in this sector. And one of the major reasons is paucity of funds. There are innovations. There are lots and lots of ideas. But I think they do not find enough money behind it for it to scale up to make a substantial difference. And I think I've looked at this sector from 85, 86 very keenly. And I know there are some phenomenal ideas which have not taken off only because there are no funds available. And it's very sorry state for India. But will that change if we get this listing platform?
I am very positive that it will definitely change, because there are people, we call it angel investors, who have funded to many good startups in Bangalore, Hyderabad, or even in Pune also. And it is like, we would have heard of Ratan Tata. He has funded so many innovative business enterprises. So at those people, even many family offices of big industrial houses, they are funding those innovative enterprises. And even for that, even SEBI had come out with startup listing platform. But this social stock exchange initiative, where it is going to get listed on a separate platform, their government is going to make some more enabling framework where companies can, because they are going to give more minimum reporting requirement, minimum disclosure requirement, because these companies cannot be burdened on the very first day to disclose so many things, so onerous reporting, because they have to focus more on innovation. They are more innovative people. So I think that will give a lot of concession to even investors also, who are okay, willing to take bet on even less disclosure, and at least they know this have good successful business model, and they will invest. Even what Mr. Sankar said, he has given example of Unilever, and there are some investors who are looking for long-term return. They do not look at the quarterly return, how much on quarter company has outperformed, and those investors are willing to take long-term bet. And if some appropriate framework in terms of taxation or KYC requirement or even structure which is created, which is win-win situation for retail investor who are putting money and end use, which is being made by the institutional investor to do this, then this platform will take good break. Of course, liquidity may not be there. Shares of such companies may not be traded so heavily. Need-based trading may happen, but initial capital, if they get it, which has not, I would say, cost of capital will be minimum because investors do not ask for the return so immediate. Then it will provide a lot of impact. It will create strong base for them, and they can raise more capital down the line. And if you look at the structure, which someone like a zero coupon bond, something is they have said for the companies which are for non-profit and companies which are for profit, then different structure. So SEBI and government, I said, SEBI and stock exchange should work out the appropriate framework. So I think that will be the next stage where we will have some learnings, as I've said, some of the experience for startups which are getting listed and or they find a problem in getting listed. So those enterprises would definitely come, and definitely some mutual fund will start some ETF or maybe index fund which will invest in such company. And even small fund, even say so $50-100 million fund will also is established in India. Then people are there, like new generation millennials are there, and if they put some sort of their saving into such fund, then there is no problem. So I am very positive, and this platform will definitely help such enterprises to raise capital. May not be very large capital, but to start with, some money will definitely flow, and with some fiscal tax benefit to those investors.
Thanks a lot. Thank you very much, Girish Bhai. I think money matters the most for something.
Can I leave?
Yes.
Can I leave, or do you have anything?
Yeah, we are closing, sir.
We are closing.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Thanks a lot for joining us. And I will get back to you, sir.
Thank you. You are
Thank
most
you
welcome.
very much for having us.
Thank you.
Yeah. Now, I mean, before we part, I mean, is there any time for question answers? Are there any questions?
There are 3 questions.
Yeah, but I think before that, I'm going to request Jaideep Kevalramani to actually look at and put together what we committed at the beginning of this webinar, that in collaboration with Professor Gupta, and I think he just gave us the cue, we are going to kind of launch a website and a platform very clearly. And JD, if you want to kind of explain it.
I have to leave, sir. Is it okay, sir?
Yeah, Girish Bhai, I'll revert back to you.
Okay.
Because we already cleared this idea.
Yeah, I've conveyed to Jaideep. I've got 6:30 another call. That's fine. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Girish Bhai.
Thanks a lot.
So, thank you. At the start of the webinar, Professor Gupta raised a clarion call for all of us to join hands and see how we could launch a crowdsourcing initiative to invite ideas for conservation of the environment. We can do that. And I'm delighted to say Legasis does what it does best, our agility and speed of bringing solutions. So while we were all on the webinar, our technology and domain team has quickly put together a crowdsourcing portal. I'm delighted to share it with you over here. And if you can see my screen, the portal is live and ready to go. This is in partnership with the Honeybee Network and Legasis. We are doing it under the aegis of the Flute, which is our innovation portal. A link of this would be shared with all the attendees after the webinar. But feel free to join in here, share your impact area and your suggestion. And we'd be more than happy to incorporate that as a part of the crowdsourcing challenge. And the shortlisted ones would be invited for a live session to actually create a solution in a time-bound fashion. And we will also look at partners to actually create a funding opportunity, or maybe if it's a social enterprise, talk to BSE and see how we could get the listing done. But that's about it. And Suhas, thank you so much for priming us in this direction.
Jaideep, can I just come in for a minute?
Most certainly, sir.
I have a suggestion for all the participants and even the panelists that, it's all good to be on the net and talk about biodiversity, please get your families together and make it a point to spend at least a day in the forest, in a national park, or any reserve, and see for yourself the immense beauty and the pleasure it gives you in watching those plants and animals doing their bit. And I think that will be the best way to, love and share the biodiversity concerns with you and your family. That's all I had to say.
Most certainly, sir. Once the COVID-19 lockdown eases, I promise to take my next trip over there. So let me be the first one to pledge that. And our trip to Ranthambore was the most memorable. We spent time in a camp and all of that. So I know exactly what you're talking about. Thank you.
Thank you.
So do you want to take the question, sir?
Yeah, we can.
Mehak, what are the questions?
Yes, yeah. So, we have question from anonymous attendee, that is rampant consumerism and capitalism has accelerated the environmental
Mehak is
degradation.
stunned by the question again.
Sorry?
Yes.
Sorry?
You were stunned by the question. You froze in time.
No. I think that it could be internet issue. What are corporates doing to mitigate this as if modern society does not consume how our industries sustain?
Sorry, read it again.
Yeah. Rampant consumerism and capitalism has accelerated the environmental degradation. What are corporates doing to mitigate this if modern society does not consume how our industries to sustain? Last sentence.
Okay. Let me have a go at it. Then maybe Suhas. I think what corporates have done, and that's what Shankar mentioned, that the good corporates and the ones which look at the longer term are very, very conscious of the carbon footprint they leave and also the products they make. How do they interact with the environment and with the biodiversity part of it? And also the consumers, how do they perceive the impact of those products on their lifestyles? So I think they are very, very conscious, and there are measures in the pipeline which are being enforced to ensure that corporates toe the line even if they are not conscious about it. Number three, I think most of the corporates have started in their balance sheets, they have started reporting the environmental impact that they have on the or through their operations. So I think all these measures are, in a way, going to enhance the biodiversity, let's say, capability or the concern that we have. So, Has, you want to add something?
No, sir, I think you kind of captured this very well in terms of saying that responsible business and business being responsible, focusing on triple bottom line benefit. I think all of these are areas which are driving the industries. And I think I wouldn't say I mean the old kind of philosophy about the greed as well as the consumerism is actually giving way to a totally different scenario today. Is actually no longer valid. I think that the talk about these aspects in today's context, or the narrative has to change. In short, I think the rampant consumerism, capitalism, I think there is no ism today. I think that narrative has to change.
I think I just wanted to mention one point. You mentioned about the EU and the steps they are taking. I have observed EU as part of my territory. I think they have, by and large, wiped out biodiversity in their region.
Correct.
Look at the continents which have it. I think Asia has it, Africa has it, and Latin America has it. And there, the point that was being made about culture being woven with biodiversity, preservance is very, very valid. All the three continents, the people their culture and their religions and practices respect biodiversity. In the America, in the northern part of America and in Europe, there is scant respect. Now that has led to this, but now they are taking fast measures. Their rivers are getting cleaner and the environment is cleaner, but there are no animals and birds, worth mentioning in numbers which are left. So I think it's a bit too late for them. And I think India and the continents I mentioned have the time and the opportunity to really take care and enhance that biodiversity.
No, absolutely fair point. I was only looking at EU regulations on the best available techniques that they have come out. They have tried to balance regulation, which are principle based to micro level. But I take your point. I think culturally, these continents, other than Europe and North America, are actually far more closer to the nature and environment than the others are. I completely take your point, sir. Are there any other questions, Mehak?
Yes, we have a question from Mr. Arun Kulkarni. It's a long question. Can I share my screen?
Okay.
All right.
So before I start, he has given best wishes of Environment Day to Legasis panelists and who all are attending this important event. My question to panelists is based on my limited understanding and knowledge of environment management laws and the practices. Now I'll share the screen and I will also unmute.
When somebody says this, I'm scared.
So you can see my screen.
Yes, we can.
So I'll read out. My question is whether NGOs are creating perception and thereafter imbalance between development and environment protection. I request panelists to please explain whether above is true in following case. Sterlite closed copper anode and smelting plant after agitations and TNPP order in 2018 affects 3,500 jobs directly and 25,000 jobs indirectly. The said plant accounted for about 40% of India's smelting capacity of copper. Until then, India was net exporter to China and formed sizable part of trade with China. After closure, India became net importer. Sterlite Council seemed to have informed the concerned authorities that agitations are funded by Chinese agency. Order was passed to close the plant. After this, the Chinese company invested in Pakistan copper mines and started importing through CPEC, China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, benefiting Pakistan and China. India lost around 3 billion approximately per year on import and export, and CAD increased proportionally on going basis. How should we as a nation maintain balance between development and environment? India has ambitious plan to uplift per capita income of average Indian and become economic power, and will investors shift from China to India if we don't strike balance?
Should I'll take it first, then maybe Suhas can join in. I think one key point there, I'm not privy to all the facts on Sterlite. I've read some news reports, but I'm not privy to that, so I won't comment on that. But I think clearly all industry and all projects, whether of importance to the nation or income generation or stakeholders, there are two big issues. One is community engagement, and second is environment engagement. I think on both these issues, companies which are operating key projects must make clear systems and practices around these, where you are in touch with the neighboring community. You do not operate as if you are a God's gift to that area or to the region, because the region is not benefiting by your presence at all. So you have to make your presence felt. You have to engage with the community. You have to help the community. All your CSR must be focused on the community, so that you help the schools, you help the the cultural organizations there, the NGOs there, send help in the projects that uplift their lives, etc., etc. Unless, if it is a project which does not engage with the community, you will someday face a backlash. Number one. Number two, are you clearly taking care of the environment? Because there are laws, and Indian companies, some of them know how to flout them as well. So you cannot get away by flouting the environment norms over a period of time, and the community will hit back. Whether the community is doing so at someone's behest, I think we all need to keep our eyes and ears open and take measures to control that. But I do not find anything unreasonable in the laws of the land or the judicial system which deals with such problems. You have the judicial remedy, and the courts are most helpful when it comes to a genuine cause. And I have gone through various projects which have had such problems and have come out of it. So I would like to say that India is well poised to be the industrial powerhouse, despite its democracy and its popular, vote that is there. And I think industries need to introspect. Why do they get into such situations?
No, very well said, sir. I think I couldn't, or nobody could have answered this better. I think I'm going to request for closing remarks, because I think we kind of overshot 6:30 deadline as well. Sir, last remarks from you, Mr. Bagga.
I think the topic was very well chosen and very timely. I think the younger generation is far more cognizant of the biodiversity issues than some of our elders who have gone by. We tried to make an impact, but I don't think we succeeded too much. But on a personal note, I think after I started wildlife photography, apart from my corporate legal roles, I think that opened my eyes into the wide world and the phenomenal experience that it gave me. And I think it also instilled the desire to protect and further the cause of the environment. I have always been an environment fanatic. Even in the plants that I was involved with across the world, I took major interest in ensuring that the environmental impact of those plants was minimized on the design table itself. And how whenever I visited, I would see what the practices were. So I think all of us in our own small way need to take steps to further the cause of environment, and also contribute in whichever way you can. So thank you
very much, sir. No, thanks a lot, sir. Thank you very much. Basuriji, closing remarks from you.
Sir, thank you very much for actually having us. It was, as Mr. Bagga said, it was such an important and pertinent topic. And I think in this, about 2.5 hours, we definitely covered a whole purview of issues. But I am very happy that we are closing on a very optimistic note of what Mr. Bagga said, that the future is bright if the future generations and the so-called current generation is more cognizant of the biodiversity issues and more environmental issues. A sensitive world is built on the shoulders of a sensitive and conscious generation. So I'm very, very optimistic that we will improve, and we'll pay for our past sins, but we will definitely make sure that the world is a better place. So thank you very much, and a very happy World Environment Day to you.
Thank you very much. Thanks a lot for joining us on this webinar. It's been an interesting kind of a session for us. Anything from JD?
Thank you, Suhas, Bagga sir, and Basuriji. Thank you very much for joining us. It was a very interesting session. Thank you again for joining us this evening. Have a great evening ahead.
Thank you, everyone.
Great.
Thanks a lot, Mac. Thank you, everybody. I'm logging off. Thanks. It has been a very interesting 2.5 hour session.